Okay, I'm officially recording now. So, for those of you that don't know me, I might know some of you. Maybe you've seen me speak at any of the other state test webinars, but my name is Marie. I'm a tutor at Queller. I've been working here 5 years now, just about. I went to Townsend Harris High School, and then I went to New York University. I graduated last year. I'm starting law school in the fall. And I usually teach ELA Math, Hunter, SHSAT, so kind of like the fourth to seventh grade age group, usually kids on the younger side. So let's get started. I was just saying to some people who were here a little bit earlier that um, there's really not that many tips that I can give when it comes to math, just because it's much more straightforward at this age. You can grades 3 to 8 than maybe reading is. And while with reading, I can tell you guys, oh, you can annotate, here are all these different types of questions, here are all these different strategies for questions. Math doesn't really work the same exact way. You may have already discussed some of these tips with your teachers at school, but first thing I'll tell you is, and this might be redundant if you've done this at school, you should always, always, always do the problem on your paper. Don't do it in your head. And I'm going to put this up as notes on the board as well if anybody wishes to copy anything. My email is on the board if anybody wants to take it down. You can always email me if you have any questions about literally anything that comes up. But anyway, you should always do the problem on paper. You should not do it in your head. Even if you feel like it's so easy and it's just some simple, I don't know, addition or subtraction, and you feel like I can totally do this in my head, and maybe you can, that's great, but you don't for the math state test or just for standardized tests in general. And the reason I say this is because if I'm solving something in my head, I might make some kind of mistake, like a silly mistake. Like let's say I'm doing some kind of long addition problem and I forget to carry over my 1 or something. I might not realize that I've made that mistake when I do it in my head. But if I'm taking that extra step where I'm writing out all the things I need to do to solve my problem on paper, I'm more likely to catch that mistake and to fix it before anything else happens. So that's kind of the first thing. You should always do it on paper. It might take you a little bit longer than if you do everything in your head, but it doesn't matter what kind of problem it is. You should try to do it on your paper if you can. Okay, so that's kind of the first thing. And now the second thing applies to checking your work. Just like for ELA, if you heard me talking at the webinar, I was telling everybody about the importance of checking their work. So same thing applies for math. And for math, kind of the best thing that you can really do if you want to check that the work that you did was correct is you do the opposite operation, or essentially you do the problem backwards. And the reason for that is if you check your work just by redoing the problem the same exact way, if you made a mistake the first time around, and you might not see it, because what if you do the exact same method again? You may not even realize that there was something wrong. You'll just see that you get the same answer again, and you're going to think that it's right. But if you do the opposite operation, like let's say I had an addition problem and I use subtraction to check it, I'm going to see that my answers are not going to match and realize, oh, I made some kind of mistake along the way. And so that's kind of why it's better to do the opposite operation. So these are my 2 main tips. Also, if at any point anyone has a question, please feel free to, either raise your hand, or if you want to send me a message in the chat, go right ahead. So, okay, now the next thing. You are going to be given, depending on your grade level, because I don't know what grade everybody's in, but if there are any formulas that you need to know or any conversions that you need to know, most likely you're going to get a reference sheet at the beginning of your test that will show you what those formulas are. Make sure you use that and you go back to it and you check, because there's been so many times where I've had students who, they get to a problem and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do because I don't know these conversions. But they forgot that like, oh, I can go back and see that there's probably a reference sheet that's going to address an exact concern right at the beginning of the exam. So, you should always just be checking right what you're already given. You'll also get a ruler and a protractor. You'll be very well prepared. However, even though I say that you're going to have a reference sheet, you should still know some general formulas and just some general conversions, right? Like you should know area of a rectangle, area of a triangle, maybe some simple conversions. I'm going to list a couple of them out on the board for you guys, and they should all look pretty familiar for you. They're probably related to, you probably all practiced with them many times before. So the first kind of category I'm going to list is perimeter. And so, oh, 2 people are in the waiting room. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, so the first thing I'm going to list is perimeter. Let me just actually make this a new little text box so that it's easier to see.
Marie, I'm just quickly checking in. Do you need anything on my end?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, good. All right, everyone. Great. Okay, go ahead. I think we're set. Okay, let me know if you need something, okay?
Okay, thank you. All right. So I'm going to put them on the bottom of the screen. And don't worry, guys, I'm going to take a screenshot anyway. But for perimeter, you should kind of know for a square, right? You add, well, for any perimeter, right? You add up all the sides of the shape. So for a square, we can say a simple formula of 4s because all the sides are the same. I just multiplied by 4. For a rectangle, I can just say 2L plus 2W. So instead of me adding up the length by width, by length, by width, I know that I'm adding the length twice. I'm doing the width twice. And I put a triangle, A plus B plus C, where each variable represents a distinct side. And then for circle, I put the circumference formula because if you think about it, the circumference of a circle is kind of like the perimeter of a circle. So hopefully those formulas everybody already knows by heart in some capacity. Okay. Now for area formulas also should be pretty self-explanatory. Hopefully you guys know for a square, we can do side squared. I can't really express that in my notes up here, but hopefully you realize I'm writing side square, so side times itself. For rectangle, it's just length times width. I wrote it as capital letters just so it doesn't look like a 1, if anybody's confused about that. And now for a parallelogram, I think here, this one, people may not necessarily know off the top of their head, but it's literally just base times height. So kind of like length times width, except now we're using base times height. And for trapezoid, it's, you add the first base, add the second base, you divide by 2, and you multiply by the height. Does anybody have any questions for me so far about anything? Okay. All right. And then for a circle, hopefully we already know it's pi r squared. I just ran out of room to type it right here. I'm just going to move it over here. And again, if any of this, let me know if you can't see anything because the writing is too small and I will make it bigger. Okay. Thank you for the message. All right. Now, when we're dealing with volume, now we're dealing with 3-dimensional shapes, right? We're not just dealing with 2-dimensional shapes anymore. You're going to be given those formulas. The only formula that I would really expect you to have memorized at this point is a right rectangular prism, so length times width times height. But on the off chance, you should still kind of have other shapes in your mind. You should still kind of know in general. So I put for a cube, it's still length times width times height, but we can also say side cubed or side to the 3rd power because all of the sides are the same. Rectangle, right rectangular prism, I wrote prison, excuse me, is length times width times height. And now if you have a prism or cylinder, as in like a triangular prism or a cylinder, your volume formula is just going to be the area of the base, whatever that would be, multiplied by your height. And then for a pyramid or cone, it's 1/3 of the area of the base times the height. So I'm going to leave that right here on the bottom. Okay, and I'm just going to take a picture of that first, actually. Okay. All right. Now we're dealing into some conversions. So I'll tell you guys a little bit of a trick. There's some prefixes that if we just know them, it makes it easier for some conversions. So if you ever see the word centi in front of a word, that means 100. So for example, there are 100 cents in a dollar. Oh, I just got a question. COVID concerning, will the protractors and rulers be provided or should we bring their own? Should we bring our own? They should still be provided. It will be like, usually what they've done is it'll be within your test booklet as like a paper protractor and folder. Francis, did you hear about that?
Yeah, I think it's safe to bring our own, but they do, yeah, it's usually a page inside the booklet and you can like make your own. So, but instead of doing arts and crafts in a very stressful morning, that's definitely going to be the plan. Okay. So we'll have
Yeah, so
that.
you can bring your own. You can bring your own for sure, but usually what it would be is it would be a page that the proctor tells you to rip out of your test book, and then it'll be like you'll have a paper ruler and a paper protractor. But if you want to be safe, you can just bring your own as well and whatever they tell you in the actual exam room.
So I'm also going to type in the actual chat box right now. I want everyone to have the 2019 Engage. I'm aware it's off the website. So luckily we have all those PDFs because we're the favorites. So I'm gonna send it. I just want to make sure everyone, please save this link so that you have it. It's all of the exams. Okay, I'll do it right now. Marie.
Evelyn, did you have a question? For instrument, oh, I got another question in the chat. For instruments that you can bring to the test, you should bring a number 2 pencil. I'll type that on the board as well, actually. So I'll just type it right here. Number 2 pencil, at least like a few, right? Not the mechanical pencil ideally, but if you have a number 2 pencil and it says the lead is number 2, then that should be fine. An eraser, so maybe like a good eraser. Like I'm thinking I have this one. That one's a really great one, but it really doesn't matter, whatever works for you. A water bottle that you can keep next to your desk. Usually they'll make you put your stuff on the floor right next to your desk. I would bring, I guess, a ruler and a protractor just to be safe. But again, that's only if those are instruments you've already been using in school. If you've never ever used a protractor ever in school, because you're in 3rd grade, then you probably are not going to need one for your exam. But just those are the basic materials that you would need. And if anything, they would also provide you with anything that you may not have for whatever reason. Okay. And Evelyn, I'm sorry, I saw you raise your hand before. Did you have a question? Okay, just message me if you do. Okay, so going back to conversions for a little bit, here's kind of a little bit of a trick, right? Dealing with the prefixes of a word. If I have centi in front of a word, it means 100. So, I know there's 100 cents in $1, and that means if there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. So that's just kind of a helpful trick to know. And then there's a similar trick for the word kilo. So kilo, that prefix means 1,000. So if you ever see kilo in front of some kind of unit, it means 1,000 of that unit is needed to make it. So for example, let's say kilogram. That would mean there are 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. Kiloliter. That would mean there are 1,000 liters in 1 kiloliter. And then kilometer, that would mean there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So that's just a helpful trick to remember, but you probably would get those on a reference sheet anyway. But just for the future, right, you know those prefixes, that might be helpful for you in the long run too. Okay, so I'm just gonna write that on the board right up here. Okay, and just some basic conversions that you might need to know. When it comes to length, you might be tested on metric units, as well as the units that, like inches, feet, miles. So I'm just pasting them on the board. 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters, 100 centimeters in 1 meter, like I said, 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. And then when it comes to other types of conversions, we know there's 12 inches in 1 foot, 3 feet in a yard, and 5,220 feet in a mile. But you would probably get those as, that would be on your reference sheet as well. I'm just, I'm giving it to you on the board anyway, just in case. Okay. Now, when it comes to volume, these are the questions that I've seen students, I don't want to say trip up on, but maybe take pause on because they weren't sure about the conversions. So when it comes to volume, I'm talking about liquid volume. So, how much water, let's say, is in my soda bottle or in my water bottle. So again, I'm putting it on the board. Just keep in mind, while there might be 16 ounces in a pound when it comes to weight, there are only 8 fluid ounces in 1 cup. So slightly different conversion happening there. And then if you look at the board, there are 2 cups in 1 pint, 2 pints in 1 quart, and 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So again, if you are able to, I would recommend memorizing these conversions to the best of your ability. But if you take a look at any old practice test for your Mass State exam, you should see a sample reference sheet that you can use as guidance as what to expect on your own state test, because they're not going to bring up anything new to trick you. They're going to be basing it off of old exams anyway. Okay, so that's volume. And then kind of the last conversion that I'll briefly talk about is weight. So weight I already mentioned. We already know there's 16 ounces in a pound. And then the other really kind of conversion there is that there are 2,000 pounds in a ton. So, very, very heavy, 2,000 pounds in a ton. You probably won't be asked about that, but that's also a good conversion to know. And then as we saw before, 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams and 1 kilogram is 1,000 pounds. So I'm just going to take another screenshot of this. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for me about anything else right now? Okay, so now I'm just going to take a little kind of poll. Can you raise your hand in the Zoom using the hand function if you're in 3rd grade, please? Okay. Can you raise your hand if you're in 4th grade, please? Okay, I saw another hand. Great. Can you raise your hand if you're in 5th grade, please? Okay. Great. Hello. There's a few 5th graders in here. Awesome. Can you raise your hand or just, use one of your functions to show if you are in 6th grade? Okay. Thank you. Are there any 7th graders? Okay, I see. And lastly, are there any 8th graders? Okay, great. So, good. I was just curious to see who's in the call because we're going to look at a couple of practice questions. And since there seems to be kind of a mix, I guess I'll open 6th grade. So you can just follow along. I'm really going to be looking more at the type of question rather than me focusing on, let's say, answering it full out. I'm just going to be looking at how the question is worded because that stays similar throughout. They're not trying to really trick you. And the kind of the test taking tips that I mentioned earlier up here, that stays the same no matter how old you are, no matter what grade you're in. You should still be following these tips. You should still know these conversions and, hopefully keep these prefixes in mind. So if you give me one moment, I'm just going to share my screen. I believe Frances has, she's pasted the exact same document within the chat. So I'll just share my screen with everyone. Okay, so everybody should be looking at grade 6. So as we see, here's a really great conversion reference sheet right here, telling us all the conversions. They go a little bit more in depth, right? They're converting kilogram to 2.2 pounds. They're converting a pound to 0.454 kilograms. Nobody's expecting you to have those conversions memorized at all. They're really telling you everything you need to know. And then, so I'm going to really make a guess that most likely you're going to have a problem that deals with area of a triangle. Most likely you're going to have a problem that might deal with volume of a right rectangular prism. Oh, I just got a question. That's a great question. You will only be taking multiple choice, only session one. So just like ELA, if you took the ELA state test, you're only going to be doing session one of math, and you won't be required to show your work for points. I'm just telling you to show your work just for your own benefit when you're doing the problem so you can see what you did. But yeah, your Scantron is going to be graded this time. So it should just look like any session one that you've ever practiced. It's okay. We see this reference sheet. Great. I'm going to go down. Okay. So I'll just tell you there, the problem is just going to be very direct, straightforward. I'm still going to focus on reading it carefully. I'm going to try to really understand what it's asking. Here they're saying which coordinate plane shows a polygon with 4 vertices graphed at -5, 5, 2, 4, 6, -2, and -3, -6. So if you were in my session about ELA, I really emphasized how you have to go through every single answer choice carefully before you make your final decision, because you might get one that looks partially right and then there's another one that's better a little bit farther down the line. Math doesn't really work like that. As soon as you get your right answer that is 100% the answer and matches exactly what's being asked of you, you can move on. You don't have to test that the other answer choices are wrong. So here I'm just trying to match it. Let's see. Let me start with choice A. Do I have anything at -5? 5, yep. 2, 4, yep. 6, -2, yep. And 3, -6. I already know that it has to be A. I don't even need to check anything else, and I can just really move on. And there's no way for me to work backwards on this one, so if I'm checking my work later, I will just check that all of my coordinates are matching up. There's really nothing else that I can do. Okay. Let's say here I have this expression, and I can do it in my head. I know 2 to the 3rd power is going to be 8. I'm still just going to write it out on my paper, maybe for myself. I'm going to solve what's in the parentheses first using order of operations. I'm going to solve my exponent right here. Finally going to divide over here. And so, do you guys still have questions, or are you just raising your hand still up from before? Okay, let me know if that is the case. Okay. All right. Oh. Did somebody have a question? Okay. Anyway. So yeah, I would just solve this one fully. Let's say I'm going to go back and check my work. I'm going to take my correct answer. I'm going to try to divide it by 4. I'm going to end up seeing if I get what my value is up here. So I'm going to try to work backwards and to check my answer. Okay. And I'm just going to go through a couple of these just to give you guys an idea. We're not going to do the whole session 1. Okay. Let's say here they're telling us the grid below is in the shape of a rectangle. What is the area in square units of the shaded part of the rectangle? Okay, so I would literally count. I'm going to see that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wide. So there's a couple ways I could go about this. I know that the formula for area of a triangle is half base times height. I can also just find the area of my whole rectangle and just divide it by 2. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to end up getting B anyway because 8 times 6, 48, divided by 2 is 24. And then for this one, I would just work backwards to check my work. And if I wanted and I had that extra time, which we do because we're not being timed, I can always even literally count up how many boxes I have, even though I don't even need to do that here. But okay. And I guess let's do one more and I'll go back to the whiteboard. Okay, so this one says the meal has 6 teaspoons of salt. The ratio of teaspoons to tablespoons is 3 to 1. How many tablespoons of salt does the meal have? So a ratio is kind of like, in some ways we can write it like a fraction. So they're telling us that for every 3 teaspoons, he has 1 tablespoon. So in some ways I'm looking for a pattern here. So if you have 3 teaspoons and that's 1 tablespoon, if he has 6 teaspoons, well, that's exactly double of what this original ratio is. I'm going to multiply my 1 by 2, and my answer is 2. And then again, I would just check my work later. Okay, I'm going to go back to the whiteboard. Okay. Those are really all the tips that I have. I'm going to run through the ones I said at the beginning, just in case again, because some people joined a little bit late. But essentially what I have written on the board, feel free to take a picture. I took a picture too. Always do the problem fully on your paper, no matter how simple you may feel it is. If it's literally 2 plus 2, I mean, you know, there's no real way to show your work for that much, but in general, complete the problem fully on the paper. That's just the reason for that is if you're solving it in your head, you might make some kind of silly mistake, you know, that you don't even realize you're making. You know, you might think that I solved this and everything is smooth and perfect and I got the answer, but you might not have realized you made some kind of mistake. If you're writing it out, you're more likely to catch yourself and be like, oh, why did I do that there? And then fix it on the spot. And then the last main tip here, really, check your work. You should always do that. Get into the habit of doing that, you know, very early in your lives, just because it's very easy to, it's easy to miss something, you know, especially if you feel like, if maybe you feel like math is your better subject and you're really blazing through it very quickly, it's easy to miss something. And it's not because you didn't know the problem or what to do. It's just because maybe you were rushing or you didn't read part of the problem or something like this. So checking your work just ensures you did all you could do to avoid that. So again, we would do the opposite operation whenever we can, just because if I do the problem the exact same way, I might somehow make that same mistake again, and I'm trying to avoid that. So doing it backwards helps me to see if maybe I messed up something along the way. And then some basic formulas and conversions are pasted below, but then again, you should always just make sure you know what's in your test booklet. You should see that you have a reference sheet. You should see that you have a protractor and a ruler. And to be on the safe side, you know, bring your own just in case, although there it would be provided in your test booklet as well. Okay, does anybody have any other questions for me? Okay, so this is why I was saying it's kind of, you know, I apologize for the delay in the Zoom. I didn't know that that was happening, but it's not like ELA where there's so many kind of different things to run through. With math, it's much more straightforward. So I guess if you don't have any questions, you can, you know, you can leave the call, but I will stay in the call if anybody wants to ask me anything privately. So again, if you don't have any other questions, really this is all I wanted to run through for today. But I will stay in the call in case anybody has something they want to ask me privately about or anything specific. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming. I'll just wait here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thanks guys. I see the messages. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll just wait if I have any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the charting with the negatives and the positives, how do you calculate that?
What do you mean the chart? Like if you have a number line with negatives and positives? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like the first one you did. How do you calculate it? The shapes on the chart.
Oh, I see. Okay, let me go back. Okay. So for this one, if you haven't seen it before, you're not going to have to worry about it. Basically, this is something, it's called a coordinate plane, which is separated into an x-axis. That's just what it's called when it's the horizontal line. And a y-axis, that's what it's called when it goes vertically. Basically, when we graph specific points to maybe we normally use graphs to show some kind of relationship. Like, let's say I want to see, I don't know, what days it rained and if there's some kind of pattern, or I want to graph some specific shape. All it means is picture like a number line stretching this way and another number line stretching that way. When we have positive numbers going to the right, it just means our numbers are going up in value. If you have negative numbers, and again, if you haven't learned them yet in school, that means that you're not going to have that on your test. The difference with negative numbers is as I go farther to the left, my number actually gets smaller. So if I have -6 over here, that's actually much smaller than -1. And you can think of it like the closer it gets to 0, the bigger it gets. So like if I go to the right, it increases. So if they are asking us to find which shape is graphed at these points, the way that I check my points is I first look to the x-axis and then I go to the y-axis. So that means if this is -5, 5, I'm going to see where is -5. Okay, it's here. And then I have to go 5 up. Oh, my point's here. If I have 2, 4, that means I go 2 to the right from 0. I go 4 up. And then same here. If I have 6, -2, first I'm going to go 6 to the right. And I'm going to go down 2. Because all it means I'm going down rather than up. And then -3, -6. Yeah. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, this makes more sense. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Sure, no problem. You probably, you're not gonna have to worry about it if you didn't have to learn this in school yet. And yeah, so for -3 to 6. Oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
So is this gonna be on the 4th grade state test or no?
No. I just picked the 6th grade state test because there were a lot of students in 6th and 7th grade, so I was kind of trying to go for a middle. But no. This is just a sample test. You're not gonna have anything that looks different than your 4th grade test at all. Like you don't have to worry about that really. Yeah, so you should just be looking at any of your practice 4th grade exams. So let me scroll up to one right now. Here we go. So this should look a little bit familiar, problems like this, right? Where we're doing just multiplication, addition, maybe working with fractions a little bit, but you're not gonna have to graph shapes like that at this point. It was just an example.
Oh, okay, got it. Thanks.
Sure, no problem.
Bye.
Okay, I will, yeah, sure. I'll stay in the call if anybody has any other questions. I'll go back to the whiteboard though. Diana, are you raising your hand? Oh, that's okay. Or Oriana, if you're here, are you raising your hand? That's okay. All right, I'll just wait right here. If anybody has any questions, I will answer. I'm gonna stop recording though.